All right, so clean energy, right? That's what everyone wants. And we're not just talking about, like, slapping some solar panels on your roof. We're going way deeper today, talking about nuclear fusion, the holy grail of power, right?
That's true.
And today we're tackling the really tough stuff, the things that, make fusion such a challenge. We're talking about the material science, which is way wilder than most people even realize.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. We're talking about reactions happening at temperatures hotter than the sun, containing that power. I mean, that's like a material scientist's worst nightmare.
It really is. It's like, how do you build a container that can hold a star?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what makes this research we're diving into today so fascinating. Some really cool new findings from MIT about a potential breakthrough in fusion reactor design.
What I always find so intriguing about this kind of research is, like, even the tiniest flaws in the reactor materials, those can cascade into these huge problems.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just the heat, it's those high-energy neutrons produced by the fusion reaction. They're bombarding the reactor walls, and even, the smallest little defect can become a major weak point.
Okay, so you've probably heard about fusion, but here's where things get really wild, and this is what I love about this research. It all comes down to helium.
Right.
Helium. You wouldn't think that'd be a problem.
Right.
I mean, we use it for balloons.
Right. It's for parties.
Exactly.
Right.
But this research actually calls it out as like a major culprit in reactor failure.
It seems kind of counterintuitive, but those high-energy neutrons we were talking about, when they hit the reactor wall, they actually create helium atoms.
Okay.
And these aren't your party balloon helium atoms. These are like, imagine tiny little wrecking balls just bouncing around inside the reactor material, causing all sorts of havoc.
So I was reading this article that you sent me, and they were comparing these helium atoms to, like, troublemakers in an ancient city.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And like all the troublemakers, they make a beeline straight for the weakest point, which in their example was like the city hall. And that's where they focus all their energy on, wreaking havoc. And in a reactor, those weak points are what are called the grain boundaries, those tiny spaces between the crystals in the material.
That's exactly right. That's a really good analogy, actually. And that's like the fundamental challenge here. These helium atoms, they love to gather at these grain boundaries. And when they do that, they weaken the material, and eventually that leads to cracks, which is, not ideal when you're trying to, bottle the power of a star.
Not ideal at all.
Yeah.
It's like a dam, right? With a tiny little leak. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until, you get the picture.
Exactly.
But this is where MIT's research comes in. They've figured out a way to essentially redirect those troublesome helium atoms, like give them somewhere else to go besides those critical grain boundaries.
Yeah. Think of it this way. What if you could make the rest of the city more appealing than City Hall? That's kind of what they're doing here. They're adding this material, iron silicate, to the reactor wall, and it basically acts as a decoy. It attracts the helium atoms away from those vulnerable spots.
Iron silicate. So simple.
Right.
It's like adding like a secret ingredient that suddenly makes everything work perfectly. But this wasn't just a lucky guess, right?
No, not at all. The team at MIT, they didn't just, throw a dart at the periodic table and get lucky. They meticulously analyzed, get this, over 50,000 different materials.
50,000.
50,000 to find the one with just the right properties to trap those helium atoms.
Wow. Talk about dedication. Okay, so they found their magic material. They found their, secret ingredient. But how do they know it actually works?
This is the really cool part, right?
Sure.
They actually bombarded a sample material containing this iron silicate with helium atoms, and guess what? It worked. The helium was drawn to the iron silicate, leaving the grain boundaries completely intact.
It's like those troublemakers. They never even made it to City Hall.
They never even made it to City Hall. They got completely distracted.
That's incredible. That's proof that, they're on to something huge here. This could be a game changer for fusion energy, right?
It certainly has the potential to be. But, it is important to remember that this is just one piece of a very complex puzzle.
Right.
There's still a lot of challenges to overcome before we have fusion power, lighting up our homes.
Of course.
But this feels like a significant step,
It does.
in the right direction.
We're talking about a potential solution to a problem that has plagued fusion research for decades.
Exactly. And what's particularly exciting is that it's a very tangible solution.
Yeah.
It's based on, solid material science. It's not just theoretical. They tested it and it works.
So while we're not, plugging our toasters and our TVs into fusion reactors just yet, this discovery definitely brings us closer to a future powered by clean, safe, and, super abundant energy. Okay, so we've got this incredible material, this iron silicate, and it has the potential to solve this huge problem that's been facing fusion energy.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out for a sec. Like, where does this research fit into this whole big picture of fusion development?
That's a great question, and it's really interesting to think about fusion research as a whole.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine this massive jigsaw puzzle.
And different teams are working on all these different pieces of it, right?
Yeah.
You've got plasma confinement, you've got magnetic fields, and then, of course, you have the materials science, like what we're talking about today, the materials that make it all possible.
So it's kind of like an orchestra, right? Everyone has their part to play, and they all have to come together to make this beautiful music.
Exactly. It's a symphony of clean energy.
I love that, a symphony of clean energy. And the material science is kind of like the unsung hero, right?
Totally. Yeah.
It's making sure that, everything else can actually work.
It's the foundation.
Exactly.
You could have the most amazing plasma physics, the coolest lasers.
Right.
But if you don't have the right materials to build it, it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing, exactly, which is why I think this research is so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge step forward, like on that material side of fusion.
Absolutely.
And speaking of materials, you were talking about this idea of, what was it called? Embedding energy.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little more? Because I got to be honest, that one's a little bit over my head.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So embedding energy, it sounds complicated.
It does.
But it's actually a pretty fundamental concept in materials science.
Okay.
Basically, it means that every material has a certain energy that's associated with like incorporating an atom of the different element into its structure.
Okay.
So you can kind of think of it like fitting a puzzle piece.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Some spaces, they're just easier to fit into than others. And the lower the embedding energy, the easier it is for those like foreign atoms, like in this case, the helium, to find a nice comfy spot within that material.
So the iron silicate, it's basically creating this like more welcoming environment for those helium atoms than the grain boundaries of the reactor wall.
Exactly. Like, imagine it's a more comfortable couch to sit on.
I like that.
The helium atoms, they're attracted to the iron silicate because it just takes less energy for them to be there.
It's like they just want to relax.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna chill out over here.
It's the path of least resistance, right?
Exactly. That is so smart.
Yeah.
So the MIT folks, they figured this out, but like that wasn't just a stroke of luck either, right? Like, how did they even know that iron silicate was going to be the perfect material for this helium problem?
Yeah, so they started with like this really methodical approach, and they basically analyzed thousands different materials to try to find one that had just the right combination of properties.
They had to like play matchmaker?
Yeah, basically.
But with like atoms?
Exactly. They were like material matchmakers.
It's incredible. It's crazy that like they were able to go from, you said it was 50,000.
50,000.
50,000 possibilities down to one.
Down to one. And then the fact that they were able to actually test it experimentally and see it work in practice.
Yeah.
That's what makes this research so compelling.
It's not just theory.
Exactly.
It actually works.
It actually works.
So that's really cool. But let's talk practicality here.
Okay.
This research sounds amazing. It's super promising.
Yeah.
But how long, realistically, until we see this kind of tech being used in actual fusion reactors?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. Like, when can I expect fusion power lighting up my house?
Right. Exactly. When can I stop paying my electricity bill?
Exactly.
Well, fusion research has a bit of a reputation, right? For long timelines. Yeah, it's a super complex field.
It is.
Lots of moving parts.
Right. It's like that old joke, right? Fusion is 30 years away.
Right.
And it always will be.
Exactly. And, there's a grain of truth to that. But in all seriousness, while we shouldn't expect to see, fusion power plants popping up overnight, this discovery is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a tangible solution to a really major problem that's been holding fusion development back for years.
For a long time, yeah. So, Maybe not tomorrow, but
Right.
definitely a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's one piece of the puzzle,
Okay.
but it's an important one.
It's an important one, and you're right to bring that up because, this is exciting.
It is exciting.
To think about all the potential impact
Yeah.
that fusion energy could have if we can make it work.
Yeah.
Right? And we've touched on it a bit, but I really want to bring it home for our listeners.
Okay.
Why should they care about this research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question.
What does it mean for them?
It all comes down to the possibility of a cleaner, more sustainable energy future. It's about, what could the world look like if we didn't have to rely on fossil fuels anymore?
Mm-hmm.
A world with way less carbon emissions, a cleaner atmosphere, a healthier planet.
Right.
That's the promise of fusion energy.
Yeah.
And this research, it brings us one step closer to making that a reality.
It's like hitting the reset button on climate change.
Right. Yeah.
Like no more worrying about, are we going to run out of oil?
Right.
What are the geopolitical tensions that come with that?
Exactly.
But fusion has this potential to be a total game changer for energy security, for global stability.
Totally. And not only that, but just the sheer abundance of energy that fusion could bring.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where we have enough clean energy to meet the needs of the entire planet.
Wow.
No more energy scarcity, no more rationing.
Right.
Just clean, abundant power for everyone.
That's amazing.
Right.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, to be honest.
It does.
And speaking of science fiction, I got to ask you. So we've got this iron silica, right? It's really good at containing those pesky helium atoms. Could it be used for other things besides fusion reactors?
Now you're thinking. That is such a good question.
Right.
And honestly, yeah, potentially. Think about it. Any technology that has to deal with extreme temperature or a lot of radiation, that kind of thing, it could benefit from this kind of material.
So we're talking better power plants.
Yeah.
Safer ways to deal with nuclear waste.
Exactly.
Maybe even building spacecraft that can handle going into deep space.
Right. Who knows what we'll discover as this technology keeps developing.
Right. Fusion power, that might still be, a couple decades away.
Right.
But these other technologies, they might be right around the corner.
Exactly.
Because that's saying the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet.
Oh, I love that one. That's a good reminder that a lot of these scientific breakthroughs, they have this ripple effect.
They do.
And they lead to all these innovations in areas we never would have expected.
Totally. It's who would have thought back when we had dial-up internet that the internet would change? Everything.
Exactly. Communication, commerce,
Yeah.
the way we consume entertainment.
Everything.
Everything.
So while we're, eagerly awaiting the arrival of fusion power, it's still really exciting to think about.
It is.
All the ways that this one breakthrough, just in material science, could change the world around us.
It's a good reminder
Yes.
that we are living
In the future, kind of.
Yeah, we're living in an age of really incredible scientific discovery.
Yeah.
And you know what? While the news isn't always positive, there's a lot of hope to be found in the work of all these brilliant researchers.
People working hard out there. Exactly.
Trying to make the world a better place.
That's awesome. And on that note, I think that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Right.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about, okay?
Okay.
So say this material breakthrough does what we hope it does.
Okay.
And we actually overcome all the other hurdles that are standing in the way of fusion energy.
Yeah.
What does that world look like?
That's a great question.
Right.
Really good question.
What does that world look like? Something to think about. And on that note, we'll say goodbye for now, but keep exploring, keep asking those questions.
Keep learning.
Keep your eye on the world of science, because you never know what amazing discoveries are right around the corner.
Until next time.
See ya.